take a few more seconds. Thank you for waiting.
Just a quick question. Is somebody going to take some screenshots during the course of this so that we can promote it later?
Can you repeat the question, Jonathan? Sorry.
Is anyone going to take some screenshots of today's presentations and so forth so that we can promote it later?
That's a good idea. Hira could do this perhaps?
Yeah, we do it.
Okay.
I'll do it. Good evening from Japan and welcome to SCoT. For those who are here for the first time, welcome to SCoT family, and for the rest of you who have been with us, I would like to thank you for coming back and rejoin us. We have a very special topic today, as you are very familiar with too, and it is sustainability, global standards versus local realities, and how to make it work in tourism and hospitality. For many of you have been thinking, and you have been working with sustainability in tourism and hospitality, but today we have a special people for you who are going to elaborate more. Our moderator is Dr. Willy Legrand. He is a professor at the IU International University of Applied Science in Germany, with a specialization in sustainable hospitality development and management. Over the past 2 decades, he has established over 24 undergraduate and graduate courses on sustainable development in business and hospitality management in Europe, South and North America, the Middle East, and Asia. He is the lead author of Sustainability in Hospitality Industry. I know he's very famous in this topic and doesn't need more explanation or introduction from me. And as we do in SCoT, we go right straight to the topic. Today, we do not have our President Jafar Jafari with us, but his message is go sustainable and think local, act global, and Dr. Willy is also thinking the same. I'm going to pass the floor to Dr. Willy, and we are all your students today.
Thank you very much, Kazem. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Smart Community Tourism, short SCoT. SCoT webinar, it's volume 44. My name is Willy Legrand. I'm a professor in Germany, as was mentioned, and I will be the host and the moderator for today's SCoT session. So I'd like to thank a few people just very shortly. So Hira Sakura, the curator, internal curator at SCoT, for the admin support. Kazem, of course, professor in Japan, and Jafar as well for enabling this webinar in the first place. So today, 4 experts debate, provide research insights, present cases, best practices on the topic of global standards versus local realities, how to make it work in tourism and hospitality. I'm really honored to be joined because we have, by the entire value chain, the tourism value chain, because we have destination certifier, entrepreneurs, and researchers. So warm welcome to my guest, and that's Natasha Montesavo. She's principal consultant, destination strategy insights at EarthCheck. Now, Natasha works with governments, regional tourism bodies, not-for-profit tourism businesses, supporting that sustainable transition in the tourism sector. And at EarthCheck was established 35 years ago, really a global player in that global scientist or scientific benchmarking certification and so on. Also joining, so welcome Tasha. Also joining is Rui Mendes. She's deputy to the President Mayor's office in the municipality of Baião in Portugal. and he's in charge of strategic project for that municipality and coordinated the implementation of sustainability that actually eventually led to the certification by EarthCheck in 2021. So welcome, Rui. Louise Qatar is the co-owner and managing director of Qatar's Safari in Kenya. She sits on the board of the Qatar's Wildlife Conservation Trust, as well as being a member of the board of the Long Run, which is a membership organization of nature-based businesses, if you don't know, and it's really driven by those 4 C's that perhaps we're going to hear about: conservation, community, commerce, and culture. Louise has got very long experience in public and private sector, and I'm super happy to welcome you, Louise. So welcome. And finally, last but not least, my friend and dear colleague, Jonathan Day. He's associate professor at the graduate program at the Purdue White Lodging J.W. Merritt Junior School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. Could you have a longer title? Jonathan is the author of many books and many articles, but most importantly, a co-editor of mine in a new book called Critical Questions in Sustainability and Hospitality that comes out in 2023. Welcome, Jonathan. So presentation is done. Let's dive straight into today's session. We are often quick in the tourism industry, as you know, to depict the world as it's sort of this giant community, right? And in a way, it's partly correct because we are interconnected with people around the world. And of course, the movement of people certainly contributes to that. When we scratch the surface a little bit, it becomes more complicated. For example, it's clear that not one business, one organization, or even one nation can resolve all our global problems, whether it's climate or biodiversity, for example. But the accumulation of local actions translate actually in global benefits. Some expert might argue that there is no sustainability unless created locally and locally only. So if you follow that logic, the question arises whether such a high degree of individualization can be standardized at all. So, you know, a hotel or destinations may decide to adopt a recognized global standard, but also ensuring relevance, local relevance. So that means, you know, looking at local needs and local requirement. So global standards raise the bars on sustainability performance, enable benchmarking, but a more tailored and local specific approach tackles issues unique to a destination. So let's untangle all of this. We'll start, so just a little bit of housekeeping. We'll start with 4 short presentations from each of the experts on this panel. After the presentation, we'll take a short break, a cultural break, with a 3-4 minutes to view a few short videos and also an opportunity to refill your glass of water, perhaps. And then we'll follow by Q&A sessions. Questions from the audience are super welcome, so please put those in the chat and we'll cover those. If you wish to ask a question to a specific speaker, do mention the name of the speaker as well in there, please. Enough from my side. Let's welcome Tasha Montesalvo. She is the Principal Consultant Destinations at EarthCheck. And Tasha, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's great to be here, so thank you for inviting us. This is certainly a topic that is very close to our hearts. We started with being posed the question, what is the ideal balance between global and local? And so for me, global is at the heart of everything that we do, particularly here at EarthCheck, but the action has to happen at a local level. So a framework is ideally aligned to global goals, to the SDGs, and to other global ambition and reporting frameworks to create efficiencies for businesses to help them and make sure that those local actions are actually delivering on the global expectations, both from consumers, from government, and also where we need to be with sustainability well into the future. The global goals themselves recognise the need for action from all stakeholders, from businesses, from government at every single level, so that they can be successful. And that cannot and will not look the same for everyone. So the first thing that we do as part of an EarthCheck certification framework is to define our scope, understanding the location, the scale, the size of the businesses, and the scope of experiences that are being delivered, because we know that that's going to influence and impact the way that different actions are taken and the way that our sustainability journey is going to look well into the future. So the framework then acts as a guiding structure or a scaffolding to create the starting steps to ensure that we're working towards that common vision. And it also allows for the scope and flexibility to be able to contextualize those activities. So whether you're a boat tour operator on the Great Barrier Reef, maybe a cultural guide in Mexico, or a hotel in the centre of London, they're all working underneath the common framework, towards those joint goals and ambitions to meet the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And all of that is achieved through actions that are relevant to their location, to their operations, and that are impactful in the world around them. So I wanted to use this time to dive into a few examples of some of the practicalities of what this looks like, utilising a global framework and delivering through local actions that are really meaningful to the places that they're located in. So as Willie mentioned, EarthCheck's been around for 35 years now, and we really focus on science and benchmarking as a key part of what we do and what we deliver at a global level. Across that, we require businesses and destinations to measure their performance across 10 key performance areas, or KPIs as we call them, and focusing in on that science and benchmarking, which was already mentioned. That's kind of our key area. One of those key performance areas, of course, is greenhouse gas emissions. So I wanted to use the examples of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to demonstrate what it looks like both for global ambition, but also the localized actions and how that plays out in reality. Reaching global goals, we know that we need to measure to manage, and that's a key part of the program that we're asking all of our certified members to be a part of. This KPI has businesses working directly and indirectly towards a number of SDGs. So it's things like good health and well-being, affordable and clean energy, industry innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, responsible production and consumption, life on land, and of course, climate change. These global goals are all reached through those local actions that we've been talking about. Businesses and destinations through the framework are committing to continuous improvements and measuring and benchmarking against other like businesses. And through this, they can identify where their weaknesses are, where their successes are, and what action needs to be done to drive real and meaningful impacts that's going to make a difference along their sustainability journey. So my first example is the Indian Hotels Company Limited. So they've saved over 218.8 million kilos of carbon since joining the EarthCheck program. So that's the equivalent of taking around 72,500 cars off the road. Their localized action, well, they focused on areas like renewable energy sources, water conservation, and phasing out single-use plastics, knowing and understanding that those were the key aspects that were really important to their community and would drive real change in the locations that they are. The group set the aim of reducing their water usage by 5% by 2021 through water-saving techniques and water-smart contests across their hotel chain to incentivize individual hotel action at that real local level. They also installed in-house water bottling across a number of locations, both to better manage their water and also to reduce waste on the properties. The group scaled up their investment in renewables from 7 to 23%. And in waste, many of their hotels are in really remote locations. So sewage and waste management has been a core focus area, understanding that that's a major challenge for them. And so across this, a number of hotels have on-site facilities to manage their sewage and waste, and 24 properties have managed to reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost all of their waste, resulting in zero waste to landfill. Taking a bit of a contrasting example, the Dasai, and I really apologise for my pronunciation here, so the Dasai in Langkawi, I think it is pronounced, I'm not quite sure, so sorry if I'm offending anyone there, but that's set in around 750 hectares of rainforest. So its back garden is beautiful, lush greenery. It now processes 93% of waste in resort. And between March in 2019 and December in 2020, 22 tonnes of food waste had been processed through their composting and turned into fertiliser, which they use in the rainforest in their own back garden. They've also managed to upcycle around 6,500 candles, and they're engaging local community entrepreneurs to support these processes and create micro businesses out of some of the opportunities that they're creating through their sustainability processes. Again, engaging that real local level. The venue has saved over 300,000 kilowatt hours of energy, and that's enough energy supply to supply 171 houses for a year over that same time period, again through implementing localized actions around monitoring how they're utilizing their energy and implementing more green power opportunities. Again, a different example, the Iberostar group, so more of a European and Caribbean-based group and across the Americas. They believe that climate change is a phenomenon that must be made an utmost priority and has been a core focus of their actions over the past decade. They identify that it poses risks to the health and well-being of their local communities and is damaging the seas and causing sea level rises. So to fight this, they're putting in procedures and policy to ensure that efficient energy, water and waste and other natural resources are utilised. They also work to buy locally and promote the use of renewable energy, as well as raise awareness to educate on the environment and natural heritage. They understand that we need to go further than just eliminating single-use plastics, so the group is focusing on actions that are even more circular. Other initiatives include implementing 450 water fountains across all their resorts in America, in the hopes that all water consumption by guests and employees occurs without plastic bottle usage. And they implemented a circular hotels pilot in the Hotel Christina in Mallorca. And that's a public-private collaboration with waste treatment companies and a number of different hotel chains, farming, technological companies, and local administration. So the program has involved the implementation of technology to separate organics from the rest of their waste. And then that's being collected by the municipal company and transported to a composting plant. Once composted, that's then delivered to local suppliers, where they're putting it on fruit and vegetables that are being grown to supply the hotels. So with this project comes a commitment to buy locally from those local farms. In 2020, 69.8 tonnes of organic waste were produced through the hotel, and they were converted into 21 tonnes of compost, which went out to their local suppliers and engaged in that process. They've also focused on energy improvements, replacing old light fixtures with LED lighting and installing smart systems to improve the efficiency of heating and cooling in common areas. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of their localized sustainability actions. Contrasting to a more urban-based development, we're looking at the Gold Coast Convention and Exhibition Centre. So that's in the southeast corner of Queensland, nice and close to my home. And it's an urban centre for both domestic and international travel. The environmental and social sustainability practices are a core value of Gold Coast Convention and Exhibition Centre and have been integral to their overarching strategy and operational practices. They've implemented air conditioning and lighting central controlled systems in order to monitor usage and shut down whenever places aren't in use. Their lights are sensor activated and with energy efficient LEDs, and that's used throughout the massive building. They also supply power boards to their conference organisers, which shut down automatically at the end of the day. The power costs are then on charge to their clients as well as an incentive to minimise consumption. Again, this is a really specific action that may not be applicable to all places, but is working really well in terms of reducing the way that their events clients are engaging with their sustainability practices. In terms of water reduction, all their taps, showers, toilets, they're all fitted with low flow restriction devices, and sensor taps were retrofitted into all public amenities. In terms of waste, just looking at the kitchen aspect, the food and bev, they've got a partnership with a local food rescue organisation here in Australia called OzHarvest, which means that any of their excess food is collected from the premise and delivered free of charge to more than 37 charities across the Gold Coast. Again, supporting their local community being a major part of what they're trying to deliver on. So all of these cases, they're all wildly different in the size, the structure, the location, the types of amenities that they're delivering, but they've all taken the EarthCheck standard and identified actions that will lead them to the greatest outcomes to meet their individual sustainability vision and their goals. The examples I've outlined are only a small part of the actions that are underway to contribute to these global goals. The ethics standard is designed to enable a flexible approach to deliver real outcomes that are meaningful and contribute directly to these global goals. So going back to the question that was first asked, where's the ideal balance? Well, as the Cheshire Cat once said to Alice in Wonderland, it doesn't matter which direction you're going if you don't know where you want to be. Thinking global enables us to work towards common ambition, to strengthen our commitment to sustainability and to all head in the same direction. Acting locally, as demonstrated by the businesses I've just spoken about, delivers outcomes that benefit communities and the planet. Ideally, a great certification program like EarthCheck will do the global thinking for the business through its standards, its framework, and its measuring system, so that businesses can take care of the local actions, knowing that in doing so, they're doing it with global goals at their heart, meaning that they're actually part of a blueprint for a better future, and they can deliver on what we all need to achieve. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tasha, for this. So formulate local action that builds into the global ambition. So global ambition at heart. That was a clear statement here from you. I've put a couple of questions and we'll come back to this in the question and answer sections. In any case, let's move straight to Rui Mendes, Deputy to the President, Mayor's Office, Municipality of Baião in Portugal. Rui, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes. You're still muted. No, we can't hear you, Rui. You have to unmute. Rui?
Yes, thank you for,
Here we go. Okay,
for the opportunity. I'm very sorry. I will have the support of a small PowerPoint only to guide my ideas, general ideas. And thank you for the opportunity to speak a little bit about our territory, our experience, that we are a sustainable destiny, touristic destiny, a journey that we are doing with EarthCheck for 4 years now. And this is a very interesting challenge for us in our municipality, because it would help us and helped us to change the scope of action of the political action that we have. I will start with a short geographical context to understand our structure, not only geographical but also demographic. We are a middle municipality from the northern of Portugal, 45 minutes from the city of Porto. The total area is 175 square kilometers, and we have around 17,000 inhabitants. Our territory extends from the River Douro, it's an international river, on its southern limits to the highest point of the Marão Mountains, a very important range of mountains that we have in north of Portugal. 20 Marão Mountains are 25 kilometers north from the river, and with an altitude that changes in all the territory from the 60 meters from above the sea level to the 416th highest point from the sea level. It's a territory with 3 mountain ranges and valleys, and with very steep slopes. So the orographic constraints is a very strong challenge that we have for a territory with this dimension, especially when we want to make a change based in the sustainability. We have the international river that crosses by 20 kilometers from our riverside. It's a touristic asset. Douro is a touristic asset that is growing maybe too fast. Probably in a few years we could face a challenge with over-tourism in this area, in this river. In Baião, there are several tourist assets that date back from 5,000 years. From the Neolithic, we have the Roman assets, many medieval sieges, and the Baroque also. The Baroque period of art also in the profusion in our territory. The structure of our population, it's aging very fast. Low academic qualifications, low birth rate, and labor gender inequalities, where women are the most number of unemployed, and also they are paid less. Our tourism sector is fast growing. In our sub-region that is composed by 11 municipalities, we are the second in growth, but also the second in income of tourism. And in our region, the Douro region, that is around 50 municipality, we are the number 3 in beds. So the number 1 is the city of Porto, for instance. Of course, that we are speaking from thousands of beds, tourist beds, for some hundreds of tourism. We have around, in our territory, we have around 700 tourism beds. So which challenge that we face with global standards versus the local change that we need to implement? First of all, the bureaucracy. In Portugal, the bureaucracy around hospitality, around tourism, is a constraint for the standards. Why a constraint? Because the legislation is so numbered, many legislation, that adopting standards from about sustainability is not a priority for many businesses. The same for tax that cost us. The tax is high for the operation, around 30% of the operation, and this is a burden for the operation. Usually, in the point that we are new, more or less new in sustainability actions for business. The change they have to do to adopt sustainability standards have a cost, and they have to understand that the cost must also be a gain. So if they pay a lot in taxes, the relation is not directly an input and a goal or a success measure for the businesses. Another problem is that few of the business operations are involved in the tourism and hospitality economy have a focus in the sustainability, especially in 2 areas: the social and environmental. The wages that are paid are very low, and also the return for the community is very incipient. And the environment is still understood as an asset, as a landscape, a beautiful landscape that can be shown and sold to tourists, and not something that must be preserved. What I'm saying is that the numbers of tourism matter more than the quality of the tourism. The same thing about the cooperation between the business and operations. Every business is more or less understandable is an island. The hotels doesn't cooperate with the other hotels. The hotels does not cooperate with the other kind of tourism operations, as travel agencies, or even with local guides, or even with, in many times, with the municipality, with the assets that we can offer them. It's tourism, or sustainability in tourism, is a new concept for many of the operations. The global standards are being transferred. This is a gain for us. They are being transferred, but they are slowly transferred. As I said before, the priority of the operations is the national legislation and not directly the global standards about sustainability or even about quality in tourism. So the other problem that also can be a virtue is that sustainability path is driven by municipality. It's the municipality, it's us, that are defining all the path and all the options that the actors, the stakeholders, the operations are implementing. It's more or less like we are grabbing a fish by the end at a time. We don't have all the system working at the same time. We are going to each business and speak them and motivate them about and to join us in this journey. So what is the goal? Our goal? The goal is to change the idea that sustainability is only the implementation of legislation for business, but it's preferable a systemic approach for each territory and for the planet. We are succeeding. Slowly, we are succeeding. Even during August, we had several businesses that met with us and asked us to help them to identify enterprises or identify some stakeholders, international stakeholders, national stakeholders that could help us to be driven towards sustainability and also to make certifications in these areas. So what kind of structural threats that we have and that global standards might help us to face? First of them, the rigidity of the stakeholders, age and academic habilitations. This is a problem or a constraint that we have, that it's changing a little bit. Why? Because of nowadays, from 2 years, more or less, from 2 years from now, there are increasing the number of degrees in tourism are increasing as employees in our region, in each of the hotels, in each of the local lodges. But we have a threat, and that is a structural, not only from Bayam, but also from most of our country, that is the fires that ravage each year our country. We live in Anthropocene. The tourism could be an interesting metaphor about or for the Anthropocene, but it's also true that probably in Portugal and in some other countries in Europe, we also live in the Pyrocene. In the Pyrocene, or the fires, the ravaging fires, will have a strong impact in how tourists understand the territory. An hazard, a natural hazard, in one local, in one place, could easily transform an opportunity for a new destination in other place. In Portugal, we are considered a very good tourism destination, but the tourists will soon understand, or can understand, that tourism in Portugal could be a risk because of fires. This year we had this example in Algarve. For the first time, we had fires near touristic hotels and lodges, and probably the adoptions of global standards could help us to define new strategies that could change or could help us to face this kind of challenges. Another problem is the over-tourism. We are facing over-tourism in some places, in Lisbon and Porto, soon to be in Algarve too, soon to be probably in Douro, and in regions as ours, that Bayam is 70% of forests, a delicate ecosystem. Over-tourism in our region could also be a risk. So the global standards and the work that we are doing with EarthCheck help us to think and to understand better ways to deal with this. Another problem is the hidden costs with tourism, with infrastructures, the pressure on water, and so on. So what we think about this, the adoption of standards might help build a local strategy that reduces and prepares for those impacts. Sensibilization, awareness, and action are essential for the change. And finally, I'm just finishing, finally, the discussion about implementation of standards, bottom down or bottom up. Think global, act local, or think local, act local. Well, for us, the two approaches are essential. One does not live without the other. The concepts, philosophy must be common. States or international organizations, international associations, and why not multinationals, must give the framework and lead by the example. Think global, act local, but also communities as ours and our inhabitants must adopt and adapt the standards to local reality. What I'm saying is that probably what the international standards should be more or less tailor-made, adopted by each of the territories according with their characteristics, according with their resources, and also according with the goals of the path that they decided. But there is a third, in my opinion, there is a third data about this question, that for new generations, it's not important how we face and how we think to introduce the global standards that are defined by the United Nations, the SDG. The global standards are the political options, but for new generations, for what I see with the contact that we have with my students, but also with the youngsters in our community, they don't care about the political options. For them, environment, it's a cause. And as a cause, for them, the attitude is more enough thinking, just act. And it's a mix of these three kinds of approaches that probably is better suitable to each territory for the next 10 to 20 years, that will be the essential to change and to introduce in each territory the global standards in order to allow us to have a development, territorial development that will benefit all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rui. So the narrative, obviously, around sustainability must evolve from being a barrier to doing business to being an opportunity, and it seems that that's some of the role that you're taking as a local government. We'll come back to the Q&A a little bit later on this. Thank you so much. We're moving straight to Louise Qatar. She's co-owner and managing director of Qatar Safari and Qatar Safari Services in Kenya. Louise, the floor is yours again for 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Willie. Thank you. So Kochas is an award-winning, very small property in the Masai Mara. We're in a conservancy adjacent to the Masai Mara, and it's owned by the Masai people. We are also part of the Long Run, whose goal is to help nature-based businesses through something called a 4C framework, a strategic planning framework that looks at conservation, community, culture, and commerce, and helps these nature-based businesses towards having a truly strategic and sustainable plan. There's different levels of it, but the highest level is something called a global ecosphere retreat. And there's, I think, now 10 members globally that have reached that very, very high standard of sustainability. It is a framework, and the strategy is developed by each nature-based business and is very localized and context specific, but in relation to global standards. It's definitely not a tick box exercise, one of the most complicated processes I've gone through. Now, I used to work for the World Bank and the United Nations, but I think the sort of juxtaposition as to global standard versus local reality is really where we're at. We're on, as I said before, community land. We've got 6,650 shareholders in a conservancy that the community have put in perpetuity for nature without being subdivided. So it's quite an achievement, because many other conservancies are individually owned. But this is group owned. And for us to succeed, we've got a small business in the Mara. We have 36 beds only. But we've got these stakeholders who are really going to make the difference in sustainability. We've done everything we can to be, to lower our carbon footprint and all of those components that make us a global ecosphere. But it's really our work with the community and whether or not we can make it worth their while, where reality and sustainability truly hits in. And I read somewhere recently that 80% of the world's biodiversity is actually protected by just 5% of the world's population. And that population tends to be in the global south. And when you look at the standards, they tend to be from the global north. At least the technical framework and the technical knowledge tends to be global north. Where we are, the community primarily don't even have primary education. And so how do you get them brought into this in a way that's meaningful? Because they're the ones ultimately that decide what happens. When you're looking at things like biodiversity, climate change, and water, they're the ones, rather than hotels. I know we can make a difference for sure, but they're the ones in the long run that can make a huge difference. So for me, that local reality is really important, and getting frameworks and standards that are accessible and understood and have the buy-in of stakeholders beyond just the private sector is really, really critical. We've also recently worked with the community on a validation exercise through Preferred by Nature, called Ecosystem Restoration Standard, where we're trying to see if there's a way to really conserve in perpetuity this conservancy, but in a way that gives such social impacts as well as biodiversity impacts, and also that works commercially as well. And it's new territory. For me, we're not even looking at carbon offsetting. We're looking at trying to position for biodiversity offsetting with the community being the sort of the beneficiaries, rather than paying for a carbon offset in another place that is meaningless to our backyard. And so we're trying to do a lot, but we're really small at the same time. We're not ecologists. We're in the tourism business. We're not social scientists, and we're not academics. And a lot of these standards, we've got the long run. There are many out there. We have to comply with various IFC standards, and among many others. And it's overly burdensome, highly technical, and not that accessible for a player with an education, or frankly, without an education. It's not accessible. And so finding ways to make it work. And I was really pleased to see the Preferred by Nature Ecosystem Restoration Initiative, because it had evolved to be more accessible to local communities, and not perhaps in the same language that we would use academically, but more accessible to those that are actually making a difference in ecosystems. The other thing that we're doing is that we are sort of low volume, high price, high impact kind of tourism product in the Masai Mara. We don't have many clients, but we have clients that tend to be influential. And it's very difficult presenting standards and making it interesting for our client base. And so during lockdown, we actually sat down and considered what are we doing here? We're in a prime sort of wildlife real estate place in the Masai Mara. We do game drives like everyone else. We do game walks, but what else should we be doing to showcase what's important contextually and locally? Because many players, you see the cute photo of a lion, a lion cub, or an elephant, and that's what advertises the product and the tourism. But we felt that it was actually more important to showcase what's important and make it fun, because what's important can also be as fun as seeing a cute baby lion. So we developed 23, we call them impact activities, but they're really focused in on the things that we feel are important. So in the Masai Mara, half of the vulture population has been decimated through poisoning, human poisoning of carcasses that bring in lions and then bring in the vultures. And when it hits the vulture population, it really is quite devastating. And there's sort of an important apex species that clean up, literally clean up everything from bones to anthrax. Those types of species, when you've got viruses out there and so on, are really important to keep. But they're probably the ugliest, smelliest kind of creature for us to showcase, but we are. And we're making it so compelling that clients go, oh, I didn't want to go on a game drive. I wanted to see what you're doing. So we've got a vulture rehabilitation program. But hopefully we don't want to be showing them that, because it's really quite devastating. What we want to be showing them is the live vultures and the story behind it and why they're important for the ecosystem. We also have one staff member who is from the Maasai, a cousin tribe of the Maasai, and he's a medicine man. He speaks no English, he speaks Swahili, but clients go on a walk with him and they learn about local plants, their medicinal uses, what foraging for food. And he now has a YouTube documentary that's got 11 million viewers. So, this local knowledge base and getting it out there to the globe in a way that's meaningful locally rather than globally, but it's also meaningful globally, we feel is really, really, really important. So whilst we meet the standards, or we try and meet the global standards, what we're also trying to do is communicate the reality locally in a way that people can understand and step up and perhaps do more. I do find that getting stuck in spreadsheets in terms of accountability is needed, but there's this other communications component that's also really important as well. And I think you can make tourism sustainable and compelling and get the story out there and make a difference But it has to be, I think it has to be think local, act global. Thank you.
Louise, thank you so much. So make standards accessible and interesting, or make standards important and fun. I guess maybe both. We'll come back to this as well in a Q&A session. Thank you so much. That was excellent. And finally, we welcome Jonathan Day. Jonathan, Associate Professor and Graduate Program Director at White Lodging, JW Merritt School of Hospitality and Tourism at Purdue. 10 minutes also for you, Jonathan. The floor is yours.
Sounds fantastic. I really enjoyed the conversation that we've just had, because I think it captures so many of the big issues that we are facing all the time. And, when faced with this question, should we be bottom up? Should we be top down? I think the important place to start is to recognize that sustainability is a wicked problem. So when I say that, a wicked problem is characterized by being complex. And by complex, I think, as I listen to Rui, all of the people that he has to get aligned and identify with these issues is complexity. It's about getting all of these people on the same page. And we face that in everything that we do. It's also
Jonathan, just shortly, I'm not sure if you're showing your slides, but we're not seeing them. We're seeing your desktop, in case you want to show your slides.
Oh, you're showing my, okay. Sorry.
I know, because you said sustainability is a wicked problem. And I know that's slide number 1, in fact.
Okay, let me stop the share and let me start again. And we'll do this. And how is that?
It's perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, great.
Okay. Secondly, it's complicated. And as an academic, I think, part of what academics do is they take really simple ideas and make them complicated. And I think that is what all of what the whole sustainability industry has done with some of these simple ideas. Many of the folks who have put together these global programs have been very comprehensive. And as we look at those comprehensive lists of things to do, and I sympathize with what you say, Louise, that it's a checkbox of things. As we look at those those complicated lists, we go, oh my gosh, am I lost in this process? When in fact, there are some really quite simple things that we can be talking about in terms of making this happen. And then finally, one of the implicit ideas behind this idea of, should it be top down or bottom up? Am I doing the right thing? Is about recognizing that in wicked problems, there are no right answers, right? It's if I am not completing exactly what is in that list of checklists, it may not be that I'm wrong. It's just that my priorities are different. And I have developed those priorities, for instance, with my stakeholders around a set of issues that are more important to me, building up perhaps into solving global issues. And so, let's start with the fact that we're dealing with this complex, wicked problem. And the reason I say that is that we need to take some of the burden of, oh my gosh, am I doing everything right, from those people who are working hard to implement these challenges. I think also with this question that you posed, Willie, is that there's a really good reason to say, why? Why are you asking that question? And I think that, I think that there are a number of different answers to that. If the question is, oh my gosh, I just want to get started and I'm overwhelmed with the number of things that I'm doing, then the answer is look in your backyard and decide what is the first most important thing that you can do. Get started. If it's becoming an excuse, oh my gosh, I can't do everything all at once, the steak is too big to chew through in a single sitting, then cut it up into pieces and find the thing that you're most interested in. If you're looking at it from a corporate social responsibility thing, I think that we definitely now have a set of, a framework in which we can look at what needs to be done and have some sense about what the rest of the world thinks is important as well. One of the things my students give me feedback on is that they say, oh my gosh, there's so many different plates that we need to keep spinning. And at least with the global standards that are out there, and I think to Natasha and the way that you are implementing that process, is that at least they have a place to start. And I'm not missing anything because I've got a blind spot where it's at. And I think the third thing, and we're starting to see this, and I'm not a real big fan of this at the moment, I'm still working my way through it, is this, oh my gosh, I'm just looking at it from a risk management point of view. The growth of ESG is really framed quite differently than some of the other stuff that we're doing. ESG is about, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, someone's going to come chasing after me. I know that I need to do greenhouse gases, and so I need to be ticking off the boxes on greenhouse gases, or I know that I need to be doing DEI, and so I need to be ticking off on DEI, because if I don't, someone's going to chase after me and my stakeholders, or whatever. So I think we need to ask the question, why? Why are we asking this question? Having said that, we're getting more and more clear about, and this is the part where we simplify things, there are some things, top line things that we know we can be doing. We can be implementing them all the way through. And I just suggest that, this notion, as I think Natasha and Rue and Louise have been sort of saying, is that, yes, I understand the big picture stuff. I know what it is, but we really need to be focusing locally. And so without going into this, we know that energy, water, and waste in the environment, as well as protecting natural spaces and natural places, are the big picture items, right? Simple ideas. And energy and water together, white waste leads to greenhouse gases, but these are the big ideas. And so let's not, speaking to Natasha, I love all of those examples. The Gold Coast Convention Center, 100 different ways to deal with energy. Every one of these places, hotels in India, dealing with waste, right? 100 different ways to implement this, but the big picture items are the ones that we focus on. And that's probably even more complex when we start to think about the the environmental side of things tends to be really easy to manage, to measure, right? But, when we start to think about the broader perspective of sustainability in terms of social justice and environmental issues, these become far more complex as we start to get it. But the big line issues, the top line issues about how we make sure that we value the contribution of everyone in this process is really important. I also think one of the things that we've been talking about here is that if your question is about performance management, I just need to know what I should be measuring so that I can get better at it, then this can be a really important element that we need to be thinking about. And global standards help us to understand where we are. But as we look at global standards and we benchmark against other people, we need to be recognizing too that we're often comparing apples with oranges, that the circumstances in one place may be quite different from another. And I think, I'm familiar enough with EarthCheck to know that they're able to adjust accordingly and be able to give, people an ability to compare apples with apples as they improve their performance. And is it important to be comprehensive? Perhaps. Is it important to be committed to continual improvement? Absolutely. I just want to put one last thing in here as a comment, and that is that sustainability isn't enough anymore. I love the comment that Louise made about getting stuck in spreadsheets. And the world has had a gutful of us talking about spreadsheets and talking about lists of things to check off with. We need to be communicating at both a local level and at a global level, that sustainability is not just about the things that we're not doing. It's not about loss of freedoms that we've had. Sustainability is about improving our communities, our businesses, our lives, the lives of individuals around us. And so, you know, we're hearing more and more about people talking about regenerative. The idea of regenerative is that we make the place better. Now, the definition of sustainability embraces that idea, but somewhere along the way, we've lost it, that it's all become about these sorts of things. And so, you know, the question isn't about, you know, should the global standards be imposed on the local area or vice versa, but really, you know, how can we get people to understand that at the very essence, this is about making our communities, our businesses, the people who are engaged in tourism better, enriched, empowered. And so that's it for me. I hope that that covers just some of the things around these complicated issues that really, at the essence, we can simplify and communicate far more effectively.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I remember you writing a while back, I don't remember where, maybe it was even for the Hospitality Net World panel, I'm not too sure. You said that sustainability needs to change the narrative around it from not making a mess of that destination to something that's much more regenerative. I don't remember where you had written this, but I thought, okay, this is actually very good, because often it is framed as sustainability is just, let's try not to make more of a mess of where we're at. Thanks very much, everyone. So, all right, I do not know about the audience, but I have quite a few pages filled now of handwritten notes here. I've tried to type a few of my questions. Also, the audience have got questions. We're going to jump on this Q&A, so don't leave in a few minutes. But as the SCoT webinar tradition, we have a cultural break of about 3 short videos. I think it's about 3 minutes, the whole thing. The short videos are 30 seconds. Stay around because they're great, 30 seconds to 90 seconds. We're starting with the Future of Conservation video, followed by the Responsible Safari video, followed by the Threadbow Resort awarded Gold Earth Check certification video. See you around and stick around, of course, because we follow straight with the Q&A for 20-minute Q&A. So the videos are coming up any minute now.
Local communities are the most important people in the conservation narrative, because that is where, on their land, all the wildlife is going through land use change. Today we have created something that directly benefits local people from having wildlife on their land. Coming on safari is about experiencing something magical in the bush, but also contributing to conserve wildlife and improving livelihoods for the local people.
My name is Peris Aloyo. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator of Cotta's Camp. Conservation and cultural preservation are the spinal cord of tourism. They are vital to the communities that live in the conservation areas and who really believe in their culture, which should be preserved for a lifetime. This is an incredible place and we all need to protect it for the future.
Threadbow is really proud to announce that we have achieved Gold EarthCheck certification. EarthCheck is the world's leading environmental certification and benchmarking group for the travel and tourism industry. To achieve Gold, we've undergone rigorous environmental checks over the past few years. Threadbow has had to meet EarthCheck's standards across 10 key performance areas, including greenhouse gas emissions, energy efficiency and waste management. Achieving the Gold certification is a massive milestone for us. Operating the resort in a way which protects our unique alpine environment is hugely important, so we can offer skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking and hiking for generations to come. From increasing food waste recycling around the resort or using innovative green technology to drive the state-of-the-art Merritts gondola, we continue to be at the forefront of reducing our carbon footprint. Thredbo was the first Australian snow resort to have its major operations powered by renewable energy in 2019. We've also partnered with Green Fleet since 2009 to offset resort vehicle emissions, including all fuel used to run our snow grooming fleet and resort shuttle buses. Thredbo also has a forestry carbon offset program, allowing guests to offset their snow travel by purchasing a tree when they buy their lift products. To date, more than 11,900 tonnes of carbon emissions have been offset by planting more than 44,000 native trees. Thank you to all of our many guests and to our staff and the team here in Thredbo who continue to support all of our sustainability initiatives to make Thredbo the great place that it is.
All right, thank you very much. Pretty amazing picture here that we've seen from those video. That's great. So everyone, we're back and we're going to go straight into the question and answer session. I am going to lead through this. And of course, if you wish to come live and just ask a question, just do so. There are some questions in the chat, including my own questions, and we'll simply go through them. So I'd like to go back to Tasha, actually, and just ask you a question. That's my question, actually. As you were talking, I picked up on this global ambition / local actions. And Jonathan partly answered this question actually at the start of his presentation, but I'd like to go back to you, Tasha. So my question was, so how do we find out what matters locally so that I also know that I make a dent on the global ambition? So I was thinking, how do you go? So do you look at what matters to my business? So this impact inwards, in other words, whatever is out there that impacts me, is that the way you find out what to work on? Or do you choose a target? You actually go proactively and you look at SDG target and you say, oh, food waste, that's a big one, SDG, whatever it is, and then I'll work 12.3, I think it is, and then I'll work on that. Or do you actually undertake some kind of community impact analysis and then you take action like Jonathan said, in your own backyard, just simply look and then work on that? So what do you advise here, Tasha?
Look, I think there's two pieces to that. Firstly, as Jonathan had on his slide, you can't manage what you don't measure. So understanding where your impact is first to address what the real challenges are. You might think you know what your biggest challenges are, but until you're looking at that cold hard data, maybe you've misread something, maybe you're not sure. So taking the time to assess where you're currently at so that then you can move forward. But also working with your local community, you'll see the challenges and issues within your local community. So reflecting that and exploring how you can adopt those principles or bring them in or work with those community to deliver on actions that actually matter to the people around you. So that could be just talking with key stakeholders, working in partnership with your local government, with your destination management organisations and other key tourism stakeholders within your network, who have probably, or some may have been working on this for some time already. So again, that will help you to understand the current positioning to be able to then set the targets, goals and ambitions for you locally as well.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, do you want to add on this? You're muted.
Yeah, I do. I want to reframe the whole conversation. And what I mean by that is that we spend way too much time thinking about what we should do and not enough time on how we do it. So the really hard things in this process are collaboration and stakeholder engagement and really listening as opposed to taking input and then doing what you want anyway, right? The hard work is the work of listening to the stakeholders in the Masai Mara, as Louise is talking about, and understanding their concerns. These are the things that we don't teach. We don't teach collaboration. We don't teach teamwork. We don't teach this sort of stuff. And so, I just reframe it that way. What are the hard things to do? It's the process stuff as opposed to the tasks.
All right, so I'll pick right on this. Thanks very much, Jonathan, for this, and go straight to Rui and to Louise, both of them, especially you, Rui, because you've mentioned that being a big barrier is to have everybody on board to actually do more sustainability, and same for you, Louise. So both of you, Rui, perhaps you want to start on this. I had written in my chat, what's the role of industry association in supporting the implementation of standards, or are they working against you, etc.? So the how of it, what Jonathan just mentioned now. How do you go about that collaboration that we actually don't teach at universities? You're quite right, to some extent. But Rui, do you want to pick up on that?
Okay, thank you. Well, it's quite simple. The goal is complex, but the initiative is simple. We have to talk with everyone one at a time. It's fishing them and show them good examples, bring them to the ideas, and give them also the tools that they can also join us in doing this. It's interesting that in our municipality, restaurants are understanding very quickly the meaning of sustainability and the circular economy. Probably faster than the hotels and the local lodges. I don't understand why. Until now, I didn't understand why, or maybe I understand, because one of the great assets that we have in Baião, it's food and wine. So the tourism, the enogastronomy food, the enogastronomy tourism is a plus for us. So probably they are ahead of the traditional tourism, hotels and lodges, and they are in front of the movement in our region. This is one explanation that I have. At least I think that the factor of the wine and food, it's very keen in Baião. It's making the restaurants to evolve in sustainability actions, especially in the circular economy. The hotels and the other local lodges, we are speaking with them one by one and show them that sustainability is the next big thing for us all, and also for them, and showing them that with our examples, and that they can also follow us. So one by one, fishing one fish at a time.
I've taken notes on that, actually. I quite like that, fishing them. Louise, do you go fishing as well in that same context? How does that work? So how do you drive that collaboration?
I think it's first and foremost important to understand perspectives. So, for customers coming to us, the Masai Mara is a wealth of rhino and elephant and lion. For the Maasai community, their wealth is measured in livestock and size of family. More children, the better. And if you don't understand that, you're going to be trying to save the elephants, when in fact, I think you need to focus attention perhaps on the human component, which in turn may save the lions or the elephants. So I think really understanding what are the incentives and pressure points, really understanding it, because otherwise a lot of investments and efforts can be misplaced.
Thank you so much for that. Maybe we can bridge this as well because there was a question here from Roxana, also to another stakeholder, which is very important, which is the staff actually as another stakeholder that needs to be implemented, that needs to be into that collaboration as well. And the question was how to implement the sustainable attitude and behavior to new staff, especially to new seasonal employees with a short period of time. So is that something that, I don't know, Tasha, if within the standards EarthCheck, there are for sure employee engagement, I would imagine, communication and training and things like that. Does that play a very important role as well in that sort of this understanding of local actions because it's driven by staff?
Yeah, absolutely. And having sustainability embedded in your vision and mission is really important to then engage your staff through that process as well. So from the moment they start engaging with your business, it should be really clear and evident that sustainability is a priority for you, to bring that life into them. upskilling to give them the skills and the capacity to understand what that actually means for the business is really important. So EarthCheck has actually been working with Tipsy, a micro-credentialing organisation, to build some 101 skills for tourism staff, frontline staff, to build that knowledge so that they're talking the same language. Often with sustainability, we find that there's a lot of technical jargon. It can be quite complicated to understand and people don't know what we're talking about. So making it, as Louise said, accessible to staff as well as to everyone else is a really important part of it. But it can also work as an opportunity to your business. Roxana in her question mentioned that it's...
Oh, Natasha just left us. Can I pick up on Rui to what Tasha was saying? Rui, when you said that you were fishing and showed them examples, do you have a feeling that it's a lot of work, or you said that restaurants are very receptive, maybe because of the fact that they deal with agricultural product, maybe they're closer to some of the issues. What sort of arguments do you have to bring forward to have them involved in what you think is important in a project? I mean, is it a business argument that you usually bring forward to hoteliers? How do you bring, how do you actually bring the arguments forward on sustainability when you have a fishing moment or you pitch?
About restaurants, well, it might be a strange explanation, but it's my idea, okay? I don't have any tangible proofs of what I'm going to say, but the managers, the hotel, the industry in our region, they are from different upbringing, okay, different kind of studies. The restaurant owners, they are more of the people type, low qualifications, low education level, and very connected to the land. The idea of the circular economy is something that my generation or our generation, probably our parents' generation, lost, because my grandparents, probably our grandparents, they do other kind of circular economy, very tight to the land. So a region, traditional, as Bayonne, the owners of the restaurants, they lived all this. So they are much more keen to the earth, to the environment, than probably the other sectors that are more urban. So the owners of the restaurations, of the hotels, they are more urban. The owners of the restaurants, they are more rural. So they are more connected with the environment, more connected with the land, and more connected with the problems. And they understand perfectly that one of our wealth and one of our ideas of that development, it's the manutention, it's sustainability. So we have to preserve the environment, we have to preserve the traditional living in order to be different from the others. The urban education, the urban upbringing is not as much of keen of that. So probably the work that we have to do, it's a little bit different and a little bit harder. But this is my empiric perception, okay? I don't have any kind of proofs of what I'm saying.
Jonathan, I think we have research here on urban versus rural understanding of and implication for sustainability here. That would be something good for us. Can I pick up from what Rui just said? Turn to you, Louise, for the concept of, because you said, okay, in a rural, there seems to be a greater understanding because they rely on the resources that are very close to the environment, etc. So there's a question from James in the chat. It says, how can new startups in tourism operate sustainably without competing for resources? And that could be for resources that are actually available to local communities, to other businesses beside tourism, as well as to the tourism businesses. I know it's a very loaded question because there's a lot there, but what is your experience when tourism operates in areas where resources are need to be shared along the way with different sectors, and especially perhaps with the consumers, with expectations, travelers' expectations of having perhaps everything available there and so on? Do you have any feedback here on that question?
We've taken an approach at Cotters, given that the Maasai community have coexisted for wildlife far longer than many other communities elsewhere in the globe, that they know what they're doing. And so we don't buy land, we work with the community and rent land, and we pay appropriately. For us, instead of competing, can we pay more than what livestock has to offer for wildlife? And is that enough of an incentive to not have competition between too much livestock or too much wildlife? Also, there's such indigenous knowledge there. Why would we find the solution? So for things like water conservation, we ask for help, we ask for knowledge to do better. We ask for formulas that work amongst the stakeholders. We try not to impose what we think is the solution. So I think using and accessing and respecting and paying for local knowledge and local resources, and trying to do that rather than compete is really important.
So that means that if this is happening and we are paying for this, there has to be an understanding that the travelers will participate into this as well. We've had surveys, right, over from the large OTAs, I think Booking and Expedia and some others in the past little while, showing that travelers are actually keen on making that positive impact at the destinations in the local communities. So, but those are indications. So our travelers' indication of favorable purchase intention of sustainable holidays or products turning into actual purchases. Listening to you, Louise, you've had a good season. Yeah, you said that, so you can see this. I don't know if, Jonathan, if you've come up with any latest studies on this, or if anyone would like to pick up on this. Is it actually taking place across the board? Also, is certification then attractive to those travelers? Do they recognize, do they appreciate what it means? This is a question perhaps across the board to whoever wishes to pick up on this.
So I just want to jump up in here and not answer your question at all, Willie.
Okay. Why am I surprised? No, go ahead.
But to elevate something that Louise is talking about, and again, it comes back to the how rather than the what. And, we give lip service to the idea of appreciating indigenous knowledge. And yet the actions tend to be, sort of patriarchal, I've got an idea and we'll solve it for you. And so again, coming back to this local versus global, real listening skills and appreciation for true appreciation for local knowledge are some of the things that we need to bring to the conversation. And so, I just elevate what Louise is doing. Now, that is true not only in a small ecotourism property in Africa, but it's true also in our larger urban centers as well. And, there's listening and really discerning the true answers without having this sort of sense of we have the solutions at this point, because again, wicked problem, the solutions are many, is a real opportunity. And we often talk about tourism as being, a tragedy of the commons, but we have many examples of the commons working quite effectively all over the world. And, this is what Elinor Ostrom got her Nobel Prize for. And so I think that we need to be thinking about how does tourism manage our commons a little bit more effectively.
That's very good. Listen, we're coming out to the end of our 20 minutes. I think we've answered a series of questions already. I think I'd like to ask you one last one, and I did not prepare you on any of this. So final word, on a scale of 10, 1 being damaging, 5 being sustainable, 10 being regenerative, what will tourism look like by 2030? Jonathan? You're on mute.
I'm an optimist, 7 to 8.
7 to 8. Rui?
6.
6. Louise?
4.
4. And Tasha?
I'm going to go midway and a nice safe 5.
All right, so we have some work to do. We have some work to do ahead of us. With this in mind, remember, there are no passengers on this spaceship Earth. We're all crew. That's a Canadian philosopher, Marshall McLuhan, who nicely wrote this in 1965. And so I think that's very important. Since we're crew, we want a crew that's educated, that can take action, but it can also have the eyes on the ball at the local without ignoring the global impact. And so with this said, I'd like to thank all the attendees today, of course, and my guest, because it's been really amazing, actually. I want to spend some time. I actually would like to go for a coffee now with all of you, physically, of course. So Tasha, Rui, Louise, and Jonathan, this was absolutely great. Thank you so much. Also for being up so early, Jonathan, and late for you, Tasha. Thank you so much. Kazem, thank you also to the team here at SCoT Webinar. Are you still here?
Yes. Thank you, Willie. It was wonderful. Actually, I tried to jump in several times, but I was just really enjoying this conversation, and I tried to be patient. Just a general question, if I may ask you, Willie, or you can pass it on to the speakers, that you know, the fact that we have communities and some level of resources existed in the communities to conserve and to sustain. It means that the sustainability has been there. But the problem is communities themselves are not sustaining their traditional knowledge of sustainability. So the existing communities are not really sustaining what or the way that they have been practicing. So how can we sustain the community level sustainability practice? So the new generations are not aware about what or how they have been practicing sustainability. And we are facing global warming, we are facing unsustainability issues. One of the facts that I'm working with is agriculture heritage and traditional agriculture. As you know, that in many parts of the world, we have these small farmers and smallholders in rural area that they have been utilizing the natural resources and sustaining it and passing on generations by generation. But these communities are shrinking, their heritage is getting forgotten. So how we can sustain this sustainability? And are we really, going back to your question originally, are we going to go local or global? This is my concern, and I would like to ask your elaborations.
So we have another 90 minutes in front of us so that we can work out that answer. We have no, but I mean, would it be we're talking about, can tourism be that major agent of transformation to those communities? I mean, if there are players that are interested in this, if there are consumers who are looking to have that authentic experience or authenticity of goods and services, can that tourism sector then be the motor, the engine to a revitalizations of those communities' sustainability endeavors or whatever they were before? I mean, that will be perhaps the question to deal with. Anyone wants to pick on this as a last final word?
Okay, maybe I need to elaborate a bit more of what I was saying. We have communities with history of sustainable management of their resources. Now tourists come to the new generation of the community that they are going to take responsibility of sustaining for tourism as well. But the new generation are not connected to their inherited sustainability knowledge, and how tourism can bridge this past, present, and future generations, how they can, or how tourism can encourage and
right, okay. Maybe we can pass this on to Jonathan. Do you want to say something? And also Rui, because Rui, you mentioned you've got an aging population. So are there any endeavors in getting the young? I mean, you have a rich food and wine culture heritage. Is there anything that's being driven that tourism is so important? You're talking about closely to over tourism, which means there is opportunities there. So maybe Jonathan, Rui, you want to pick up on this question?
Yes, just 1 minute. It's a very interesting question, but I think it would be also a discussion webinar, only a webinar about this. But first, tourism changes communities. We cannot be innocent. After tourism or with tourism, there is no pristine territories, there is no immaculate or virginal communities, nothing. Tourism changes, but it's something that we have to do and something that we have to embrace, and avoiding that change everything, avoiding disnification of a territory. Second, we have a project that an English direct translation would be a communitarian relations center, where we put the elder with the younger, the grandfathers, grandparents with the grandchilds. And in these centers, in the physical centers, we have 5 of them in our territory. In these in these centers, the different generations teach the other generations. The grandparents can teach the youngers how to sew a piece of cloth, something that does not exist. If something is corrupt in cloth, it goes to trash, and we change it. And other kind of things, how to peel a potato and to take to use the peel of the potato to the agriculture, etc., etc. So we are doing these kind of things in order to preserve the memory and also to preserve the use, and also to show that circular economy is something that is not a recent, it's a recent trend, but it's not something that appeared now. It goes from our ancestors. So there's only these two ideas, general ideas, that we could go on discussing for some hours more.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I guess I've got 2 really quick comments. One is that, the old saying that when you only know how to use a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I want to sort of suggest that, tourism can be a great tool to achieve some of these goals, but it's not the only tool. And I think we need to sort of sometimes recognize that there are other issues that need to be solved that don't include tourism. Having said that, the achievement of the goals that you're talking about, Kazem, it really means a new set of skills for the folks that you're talking about. It means, sort of creating an experience based on those original ways of doing things that provides value for a visitor as well. And so quite often we say, okay, we want to keep those old skills without recognizing these new skills. And I think about, certainly in Australia, we have examples of cultural heritage where, we're preserving cultural heritage, but we're doing it by providing great experiences for visitors along the way. And so this is complex, right? Because it's not only maintaining those old skills, but it's also changing a mindset. And quite often, this is only a partial contribution to the overall well-being of the and financial viability of some of these elements. So, yeah, sorry, two quick comments, and I appreciate that you're working on a very deep and complex conversation here and challenge, and so I wish you every success in these endeavors, because they're so critical and fascinating in that they are universal. You can go to Nepal, you can go to Colombia, you can go throughout Africa, and it's these small rural communities that are struggling. You can go to rural Indiana with the same problems of, how do I keep my people here in this rural community? So thank you for the work that you're doing on that.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. All right. So we've come to the end. Kazem, you have the last word.
Thank you very much. I would like to pass it on to Malcolm to wrap the discussion and a quick conclusion. Malcolm, do you have?
Yes, he does this to me right at the very end of a magnificent discussion. I'm going to basically say that I agree entirely with Jonathan that we know what needs to be done, basically. It's very complex, it's in several layers, but it's the how and who is involved are the important questions we haven't really dealt with. We can say, what is the ideal balance between activity and sustainability, regeneration and community involvement? But who coordinates that is important. Who owns that process is important. Who owns the priorities in the local or the global? And that's where some of these disjoints are that we're finding very much difficulty in actually getting over the disjointed nature of our response. We may know what we need to do, but we can't do it because we haven't got the system organized. Louisa's comments about the balance through stakeholders in the communities is critical. Which of the stakeholders can we liberate to be able to do more than they can now? We don't think we can rely upon business to do the right thing. Who else is there with the power to do something? And I don't think that government is the solution. The community is somehow, but the government is, well, put it a different way, the policies that you might use can be generated, sure, but you still have the same problem. The disjointed way of dealing with the problem isn't helped by having legislation. I would say that in summary, we do need to go towards regeneration. What is that? The regeneration of tourism could lead you to over-tourism, as was mentioned tonight. Regeneration of community is what's that community doing now and what's it for? Needs to be sorted out. My comments are necessarily brief, but what we're doing with SCoT webinars is to use them as the basis for discussion documents in the future. So we will attempt, and we've been saying this for a while, but we will attempt to bring forth the key points of each webinar, the 60-odd webinars that Kazem has referred to. So I'd like to thank everybody for isolating and illustrating the problem. And I wish everybody a great deal of luck in trying to make it happen. Thank you very
Malcolm.
much.
Thank you. Yep, Kazem, I could see the message from Hira. She'd like to take a group photo. So
Yes, I would like to ask everybody to turn on cameras, if possible, and we will have a group photo quickly. Hey guys, don't be shy. Yes.
Turn your cameras on, people.
Great faces. You're going to have the photo in a few seconds. Okay, I think we are good. a big smile, and great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You and we look forward to see you in SCoT again. Thank you, Dr. Willie, for this wonderful event and this really handful discussion. And thanks to all the speakers. I'm really looking forward to learn from you more in the future.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks. Bye.
Tasha, Rui,
Thank
Jonathan.
you.
Thank